Welcome to new negotiator training for hotel and union negotiators affiliated with the Zinnia Hotel. As you get started on this exercise, I have a few tips for you. Yes, for starters, you have a lot to digest. There's a lot of information, the contract is complicated, pressures from your constituencies. All of this is intended to add to the realism. You need to figure out the contract, which again is complicated, but this reflects the fact that in union as well as non-union situations, the employment relationship is complicated. Lots of details, lots of expectations, obligations, compensation, etc. Right, and so this is a way to really immerse yourself in that and try to figure it out and think about the complexities. There's a lot of information thrown at negotiators on both sides of the table. Right, constituencies, whether it's a boss or others on the hotel side, whether it's rank and file, on the union side, right, a lot of pressures. And this is something that is realistic, and negotiators have to work through that and digest all the information that's being thrown at you. And then once you start to get a sense of what different parties want and what the environment is, what the competitive level is of the hotel, what major pressures are in the environment, then as negotiators on both the union side as well as on the management side, right, then you need to prioritize, what's most important given the environment, what might be hopeful but somewhat of a reach, and what's just sort of wishful thinking that you probably won't be able to achieve in these negotiations. So again, it's up to the negotiators to really prioritize this. You can't just simply turn around and try to get everything that your constituencies want. You have to reach an agreement that both parties can live with, both sets of negotiators across the table, but also your constituencies as well. And so remember, you're going to have to sell your agreement to your constituency at the end. So keep that in mind as you proceed through the negotiation. Okay, so then, as you start to get into the contract, right, think about, given what's going on in the environment and what your constituencies want, right, what are parts of the contract that seem fine, you can just carry forward and live with unchanged with the new contract, and what are, a small number perhaps of sections that you think you really need to address. Again, for a lot of the contract, the clauses can stay the same. Right, and that means what's ever in effect, or the way to think about that is to think of it as whatever's in effect at the end of the contract when it expires. Think of that as the status quo. That just continues forward unchanged. Right, so if you don't make any changes to holidays, then the number of holidays will continue as they currently stand. If you don't make any changes to language relating to layoff procedures, right, then that would just be part of the new agreement and you'd be living with that same language. So this also means that the current contributions for retirement as well as health and welfare, right, think of them as starting from the level that the previous contract is ending at. Wages, however, can be a point of confusion for students as they start this exercise, right? Making no changes to wages means that they are staying fixed at the level at the end of the previous contract. Right? That doesn't mean that you're giving the same level of wage increases in different years as the previous contract. Right? If you're not making any changes to wages, that means you're not giving any adjustments, not giving any raises or any cuts or anything like that. Right? What happened in the previous contract is useful for historical information. Right? Maybe it's setting expectations. You can judge whether the previous contract was generous or stingy, right? So it's useful for historical information, right? But it's a new time period, and you need to figure out, what kind of wage adjustments, if any, right, make sense in the current environment. Okay, so in thinking about what changes you'd like to see in the contract, right, you should also be estimating the new costs or new savings that would be flowing from those different items. But remember, right, what's already in the contract is already built into the financial statements. So the current level of retirement and health and welfare contributions, for example, right, that's already built into your financial statements. So if you're not going to make any changes to those, if you're going to keep the same level of contribution moving forward, right, then yes, you'll have expenses associated with that. Obviously, you're paying those contributions. But what you're trying to cost here in terms of your planning are the new costs. So if you don't make any changes, again, to retirement or health and welfare contributions, your net new cost is zero, right? So just focus on what you're adding to the contract or subtracting for the contract, not what's continuing moving forward. So again, if you're proposing to, say, add a 25-cent contribution to health insurance, then cost out the 25 cents, not the 25 cents plus the existing contribution that you're maintaining. Okay, and remember in doing the costing exercise that while it's very important, right, that it's just estimates. You're never going to know exactly what something is going to cost because employees will turn over, they might not use all of their vacation, there might be varying levels of overtime, different from what you're estimating right now. So it's good to get a ballpark of where things are, but don't worry about getting it too precise. Right, that's not really the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is to sort of get a sense, right, is something going to cost you $25,000 versus $50,000 versus $100,000, right? That's the type of thing you're looking for, not is this going to cost $25,000 versus $25,300 or something like that. Now, in costing future years, don't forget about carrying forward any first year or earlier year costs as well. So for example, suppose the hotel is going to give a 2% wage increase when the contract starts, and let's say that costs about $100,000. And then in the second year, let's suppose you're going to give a 3% wage increase on top of that, right? Well, you're still carrying forward the 2% wage increase from the first year, and so the first year of, say, $100,000 costs, right, you're going to have that $100,000 in the second year because you're paying that higher level of wages to begin with, right? And so you need to add that in the second year to your 3% or whatever it is you're going to add in the second year. So don't forget, in some cases, to carry forward those types of costs. What else is on my list here? So on the websites, there's some planning worksheets for both the union side as well as the hotel side. You don't need to fill in every single row, right? There's a number of different rows. There's a reminder to be thinking broadly about different issues to possibly consider, right? But it doesn't mean you have to make changes in all of those issues. It's really up to the negotiating teams, right? Given what their constituencies want, given the environment, right? It's really up to you to prioritize the types of changes you want to see. Lastly, the health insurance plan might be a little unfamiliar to you. It's a multi-employer plan, so think of it as a situation where a number of unionized hotels in the Twin Cities are making hourly contributions to this trust fund, right? And it's actually the trust fund that is purchasing insurance coverage for employees, not the actual hotels themselves. Right, this is advantageous because if workers move from hotel to hotel, they can have the same insurance coverage, and also you can get better rates because the trust fund is negotiating with insurance companies on behalf of more workers, pooling a number of hotels together. So again, the Zinnia is not directly providing coverage. The Zinnia is making contributions to a trust fund, and the trust fund is actually purchasing coverage. So if you want to make changes to the healthcare plan, you need to estimate how much this can cost. And again, this can be complicated. Do the best you can. Don't get mired down in the details too much. So you'll need to estimate how much changing prescription rates or things like that may change overall costs, and then negotiate how much the Zinnia is going to pay for in the form of hourly contributions to the trust fund, and how much employees are going to pay for, right? For example, in terms of subsidizing their or cost sharing their own premiums, things of that nature. So there's a lot to digest. Right? Try to see that as part of the immersive experience. It's very realistic. Ultimately, you have to figure out the landscape, figure out the contract, but then prioritize what you really think is most important for your side to change. Most of all, try to have fun.